Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing the support tier list for 13.1b. So this is basically 13.2, but because they got hacked, Riot got hacked, they couldn't officially release 13.2 or something. I don't know technically, but this is where there were a lot of changes. Check out my patch notes from a couple of days ago if you want to see more on that. And I am going to be doing at least an ADC tier list as well, and I'll probably check out some of the other roles too, but this did shake up the meta quite a bit in some other roles. A little bit less so, I think, for support in solo queue, although there is a little bit of movement from last time. So let's go ahead and get in there. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. And let's go. Okay, so... do I not? Yeah, there's presentation mode. There we go. To the surprise of probably nobody, I still have Rakan as number one. And... yes, I am, going to be a little biased because I do play Rakan a lot. However, I think Rakan does have a lot of things going for him in this meta, like I talked about before. And this is perhaps his highest win rate, maybe ever, in solo queue. He's actually approaching 53%. It's 52.5%. So if you followed this channel for a long time, or you just look at the win rates on Rakan, historically, he's between 48 and 50% win rate. Even when he's hard dominating in pro, he's still going to be in that range. And the big reason is he's difficult to play, right? Like, I think the only other support that's probably as hard or maybe even a little bit harder than Rakan to play is Thresh. And the reason why Rakan is hard to play, because he does have a lot of things that can make him very safe, but you have a lot of decisions that you have to make. So you have to decide, how are you going to open? There are a lot of different ways you can open. You just try to lead with your W. Do you go R and then W? Do you try to shield to somebody first? R plus shield, then W. Do you use your E to get back out? Or you try to shield the person that is up on the front line so they have more survivability? So there's a lot of different ways you can sequence his abilities, and your results will vary drastically depending on if you're making the right decisions or not with him. And you get hard punished if you don't, right? So if you get CC'd or you get hit by a bunch of AoE spells, you're going to be in trouble because he is somewhat squishy by design, at least more so than many of the other champions out there. Also, his engage, I would say, is a little bit harder to hit than some of the other ones. Because you have to go forward with your W first, then there's that slight delay, and then you go up. And there are a lot of interactions that are very frustrating, and if you're not aware of those, it can be a problem. So people can knock you out of your W before you land it, and then your W won't happen anymore. So for instance, like Thresh can flay you back with his E before your W animation starts, and you won't get it. Versus most other engaged champions, when Nautilus throws his hook, or Leona, or Blitz, or whatever, if they land it, it's going to land most of the time, right? And it's going to work. So with Rakan, you have to dodge a lot of skill shots and a lot of ways people might interact with you in order to have effective engages. So you can't just hook the Lux standing there like you can with a Blitzcrank. You have to, play around the fact that she has that Q if it's up, and you have to try to bait that out of her or flash it in order to land your W to get an engage on her. So that just makes him really hard to play. And that's why historically he has a low win rate, but he has a higher win rate right now because he's actually quite good in the meta for a variety of reasons. So let's talk about him really quickly. I'll try not to spend a ton of time on him because I, talk about him all the time on stream. But people do like to ask, because I do play him so much, why do I think he's strong right now? What are some things you should be doing with him? Well, the runes are pretty standard, so we can start with that. I think just Guardian, most of the time, second wind. If you're against a hardcore all-in lane, you could do bone plating. Conditioning is okay later on, but second wind just gives you so much more value from poke in the laning phase. I really don't like unflinching after the nerfs to it. It just feels like it just doesn't do enough. So I would rather get Revitalize or Overgrowth. If you're going for more AP builds or something that's going to have plus healing and shielding in it, Mikhail's, Ardent Sensor, that type of thing, I might go Revitalize. This also does give you a little bit more sustain early on if you're against heavy poke. I've been liking Overgrowth if you're going to do RV, so Radiant Virtue, just because of the way that stacks with Radiant Virtue. Your health is so valuable. We'll talk about that item in a second. So I've been tending to go more towards Overgrowth. It is a bit more scaling, but I do like it. It gives you 200 or 300 gold, maybe at 30 minutes, or 200 or 300 health at 25 or 30 minutes. So it's pretty reasonable. And then I basically always go Zombie Ward. This is just so tremendous for vision control as a support. I try to get it on almost every support that I play, especially things that can ward really well. Rakan does that super well. He can go deep in the jungle and usually get away if you get intercepted. So that is one advantage among many, is that Rakan has extremely good vision control because of his mobility. So take advantage of that with Zombie Ward. And then Ulti Hunter, you have a hugely impactful ult if you use it correctly. It is on somewhat of a long cooldown though. I think it's like 130. Yeah, at level 1. So Ulti Hunter, very, very good on Rakan. You know, you could make an argument if you're going to be roaming a lot that Relentless Hunter could be good too. If you think you're just going to, you know, sit on mid a lot of the game. Or if you're going to have, you know, like a 1-3-1 double split push late game. It's pretty rare in most elos. But just something like that, then Relentless Hunter could be okay. But I just do ulti most of the time. And then as far as his itemization, you have a ton of different options with Rakan. However, I think there are two that really shine above the rest right now. Number one that I've been playing a lot is Radiant Virtue. Now this item is expensive and the build path can be somewhat annoying if you don't have the right back timings to complete, especially like the Aegis. If you back with like 600 gold and it's 750 to combine it, that's kind of frustrating. But once you actually get it completed, it gives you a ton of value. Now this thing was kind of trash when they first released it. It used to only be, I think, 1% max health every 3 seconds. They doubled it to 2%. So now it's actually a really good item. Because if you, and I think it ticks immediately as well, like right when you do it, and then for 2% every 3 seconds after that. So you get 4 ticks. That's basically 8% of your max health and their max health. Has a huge radius on it. Doesn't say what it is, but it's like 1,000 or something. And every tick checks the radius again. So if you stand close, if you get closer to somebody who's taking damage, then they're going to heal for more. And if they're low on health, then they get up to 100% more based on their missing health. So you could, in theory, get somewhere close to 15 or 16% max health increase. You also gain 10% max health right off the bat for the duration. So if you have 2,000 health, you get 200. It's almost like a 200 shield, almost like Locket, which is really good. And, it says 1,200 range right there. So yeah, it's really, really far. It'll definitely heal your whole team for quite a bit. I would say in a lot of situations, you know, if you're getting even just 12% off of it, and the average HP is like 2,000, that's still 240 HP. That's basically a redemption proc in a lot of circumstances, and a lot of people on your team are going to have more than that in the current meta. There are lots of kind of bruisers that, you know, every item's going to have some HP on it, so it's a lot. So it basically, a good way to think about it is it's pretty much a redemption that can't miss as far as healing. Gives you 10% max health, so it gives you a personal Locket shield. Redemptions everybody, can't miss, huge radius, and gives everybody 20 free ability haste, which is like 500 gold or something. Maybe not quite that much. 450 gold worth of ability haste. Again, probably not going to miss because it's got a huge radius on it. Everyone on your team's going to have that. So it's just like an extreme amount of value in team fights. It's really, really good. And the stats on it are great for Rakan because, like I said earlier, one of the big weaknesses is if you get CC'd and blown up, that's bad, right? But if you have this little bit of extra health here, you have 400 health versus 200 if you go Shurelya's or Locket. You have the 30-30 armor and magic resist. Shurelya's doesn't have any on it. Locket is going to have, I think Locket might have the same amount, 30-30. Might be 20-20. No, it's 30-30, but it's missing the 200 health. It's really good. And you also get 100 health for every additional legendary item, which is a very good value. That's like 266 gold value for each additional mythic. So Extremely good item, expensive to buy, but the components are pretty good. It's just annoying to combine for Aegis, especially, but everything else is pretty solid. And a build that I've really been digging with this is to actually go for Magi second. Now, there's not a huge sample size here, but it's been working out for me in a lot of games, is just getting the component for Magi's. I forgot the name of that ring, but the ring is like over 100% efficient by itself. Okay, let's look it up here. Because sometimes, like, my teammates think I'm trolling if I get this item, especially for, like, even in a game. But just look at the value on this item, right? So you can just get Dark Seal early. So I like usually getting, like, boots and Dark Seal and, like, a control ward on my first back if I have enough gold for it. And this thing by itself, even with no stacks, is still pretty efficient. It's 125% efficient with 0 stacks. And if you have 10 stacks, it's 372% efficient. So there's not that much risk in taking this item. And this is nice because it gives you a little bit more ability power, especially if you get ahead in the lane where you can keep pressing your advantage. That's one thing that Radiant Virtue is missing, is there's no ability power on it. So if you were going for something like a Shirelia's, then you can get an Amp Tome early and keep pressing your advantage to help your ADC snowball, get more kills, all that kind of stuff. Rakan really likes AP. Radiant Virtue doesn't have AP. So just go ahead and pick this up early. See how you feel. If you think you can survive without dying a lot, which Rakan can do if you play correctly, especially with this build where you're getting, you know, more HP, more armor, more magic resist. If you play well, then you can probably survive most situations. And there's not that much. There definitely is bursts, like there are Zeds and things out there. But I feel like there's a lot more kind of emphasis on sustained damage these days than just like you're going to get one shot in point, 2 seconds. Like you're not seeing as many like Kha'Zix, Rengar, stuff like that. There's some of that, but it's a lot more, kind of like Irelia, Yasuo type of champs that probably aren't going to one-shot you in a lot of scenarios. So it should be fairly easy to protect this. Radiant Virtue helps you protect it. And then if you just happen to have that 1200 gold to combine it, this item's actually a lot more gold efficient than people think it is. People think if it's not like fully stacked, then it sucks. But the truth is it only needs 6 stacks in order to be cost efficient if you have Radiant Virtue. Because remember, it's going to give you 100 extra health because it counts as a legendary item. So keep that in mind too. It's a 1600 gold item that has that free 277 gold value built in if you already have Radiant Virtue. So it's a really good item on Rakan. This actually gives you more survivability too, because the more ability power you have, it buffs up your passive shield, which is like a 0.9 AP ratio. And it increases your heal off of your Q by quite a bit too. I think it's like maybe a 0.7 or 0.8 heal on the Q. And you can protect your allies a lot better because your shield on your E is 0.8 per application of shield. So it's basically a 1.6 AP ratio on your shield. Janna's like a 0.6 or 0.7 by comparison. So Rakan scales really, really hard with AP, both for protecting himself and protecting his allies. So if you can get away with Magi's, it's really, really good. Especially at like low diamond and lower. And it's not that much risk to try it. Just get the ring, see how it goes. If you die a few times with the ring, maybe don't complete the Magi's. But if you're doing well, go ahead and complete it. And it, one team fight, and you can very easily get back to 6 stacks. If you happen to lose some stacks. So obviously you don't want to lose them, but even if you do, usually you can recover. So that's something I've been digging, and that works well with Radiant also because this item is more expensive. It's 3,000 gold, so it's a lot less likely you're going to be able to complete a third item off of this. So versus if you got Shirelia's for 2,500, you might be able to complete a third item. So with Radiant plus Magi's, they kind of balance each other out because this is 500 gold more expensive. This is, about 800 gold less expensive than a traditional second item like a Knight's Vow or a Zeke's. So they kind of balance out a little bit to be able to get both of those in terms of your timing windows, your itemization, and stuff like that. So that's the build I've been digging. And then if you have a third item, you can get Knight's Vow as my favorite one. It just protects you and protects allies really well. Now, and this also scales extremely well with Radiant Virtue. If you don't want to get Mage Eyes or you just want to sit on the ring, I would definitely go Knight's Vow second, just because that health is so valuable with all the Radiant stuff. Now, I would virtually never get Putrefier after these changes. This actually does not reflect the change in it, but it basically lost, I think, 5 ability haste and 20 ability power in exchange for 8 plus healing and shielding. I don't think that's worth it at all. And Oblivion Orb is a much better item now. It's 40% Grievous Wounds again, and if you could bump it up to the completed Chemtech, you don't get any extra Grievous. You just get some stats that, frankly, are pretty bad for the value. So I would highly consider getting something like Morellonomicon if you have Oblivion Orb and if you want to complete it. Remember, you don't have to complete it anymore. You still get the 40% even if you don't. The 10 spell pen is kind of weird on Rakan. I mean, you do have 3 different things that do magic damage, your Q, your R, and your W, so you do get some value out of it. It doesn't have ability haste, which kind of sucks, but it does have health on it, which is really nice, especially with Radiant Virtue again, and 90 ability power is massive. That's 50 more. That's over 1,000 gold worth of extra ability power from Putrefier, and it's only cost what? Oh, it does cost a lot more. It's 3,000 gold. Yeah, it's really weird. There's an alternator, but there's no proc damage on the final item. So I'd probably just sit on Oblivion Orb. But if you really have the money and you need to complete something, then I would do Morello. I just wouldn't do the Putrefier anymore. I know it looks like it has a good win rate, but I'm not sure if this is updated to reflect the nerf. The nerf's only been out for a couple of days. So that's pretty much what I would run. You can do Zeke's, especially if your ADC's ahead. Particularly something like a Samira, because each shot of her ultimate is going to proc Zeke's. Now, I think it's at a reduced rate. I don't know how it works with like on-hit procs or crits, but it's probably like a third of the value. But that's still a lot of value. So on something like a Samira or just something else that's going to be able to hit people a lot in a short period of time, maybe like a Twitch ult with Hurricane, you know, that type of thing, Zeke's can be a pretty good option too. But those are the 3 I would really lean into. You can do Mikhail's if they have a ton of CC, and especially if they have a lot of magic damage on their team. Then if you're getting a lot of value off of that 50 magic resist, that could be an okay item as well. But if you're not sure what to get, I would just default to Radiant Virtue, Knight's Vow. Shirelia's is still quite good. It just all depends on how much value you get out of the movement speed. So movement speed's obviously one of the best stats in the game. It helps out a ton of these bruisers that really just want to get in there and stick to people. You know, your Maokai, Darius, Wukong, all of these champs that are very popular and powerful love Shirelia's. So, Hecarim. So it is really good. The mana regen value falls off pretty hard outside the laning phase, and you're going to be really squishy with this item because it doesn't give you any magic resist or armor, and it has 200 less health. So the raw stat value of Radiant is way, way bigger. You're getting thousands and thousands of gold in stat value, but it's hard to put a value on running the enemy team down and killing them, right, with Shrelia. So it's up to you. 5 ability haste is also like substantially weaker than 100 health as far as a mythic passive. So, you know, Radiant is about 3.5% higher win rate. I think it's a lot stronger. It is more expensive. Shrelia's, the movement speed is difficult to deny. You know, that is very powerful. So, it's up to you. Some people are doing Even Shroud. I mean, I guess if you need a lot more damage, like, it's still a good item. And that does solve the a little bit of your durability issues, right? You do get the 30 armor magic resist, but you only get 200 health, so it's pretty good. 5 armor, 5 magic resist is pretty good too. It's about 200 gold value. I just think RV's better. Locket is something that people get sometimes. Like, this can be helpful against, like, a lot of burst, especially if they're going to have grievous wounds, because obviously RV is going to be reduced by grievous wounds. But I don't know. It just, every time I get this item, I lose, it feels like. And part of it is because I'm in a bad situation when I do get it. But I guess if they have a lot of AoE damage, like spike damage, that you need to try to prevent, Locket can be good. But I think it's just a bait a lot of the time. Okay, let's carry on. I said I wouldn't talk about Rakan a lot, and there's like 12 minutes on Rakan, but we'll try to move through everyone else a little bit faster here. So yes, Rakan, very versatile, very strong right now. He's just good at engaging and killing people. He's good at peeling. He scales extremely well. He's got a wide variety of strong utility items like Shirelia's and RV that he can itemize into. He's one of the best champions to itemize into Grievous Wounds with Oblivion Orb. She's just got a lot going for him. As long as you can play him well. You have to be able to play him well, and you're probably going to lose a lot of games learning him. So just be ready for that, just like Thresh historically. Okay, so Sona is another one that I think most people are going to have near the top of their tier list. And a big part of this is the Archangel's Rod of the Ages buff. Now, I tried this build. Going for both of them is greedy on a support because they're both expensive. They're like beyond the support budget. Usually support budget's about 2,500 gold for first item. Obviously, RV is beyond that as well. And sometimes you can get away with buying one item that's 3,000 gold, but buying two items that's like, you know, significantly more than 2,600, 2,700, it gets pretty rough, especially because both of them need to stack. However, it does have a really high win rate and is very, very good and fixes a lot of things with Sona. So she scales really well with AP because she gives, you know, different bonuses that scale with AP to her whole team through her Q or W and her E. And then once you get so much health and mana back, you get a little bit of bonus movement speed, which can help you kite things better. That's really handy. But this item's just really cost efficient once you get it fully stacked. It's just, once you get tier first, you know, how fast are you going to be able to start this item? So I think if you get 1 or 2 kills or assists, like this can be pretty good. Otherwise, Shirelia's is still really strong because anything that empowers or protects your allies is going to give them that speed. All of your auras count for that. So it's really, really easy to spread this out. And all your stuff is on a low cooldown as well. And they can only be affected once every 4 seconds, but it's going to be up a lot. So I think Shirelia's is quite good. You can do Moonstone. I don't like Moonstone as much. If you don't have any other healers on your team and you know they're probably not likely to get Grievous Wounds, this is good. But it just kind of gets hard counter versus Grievous and doesn't give you that much more utility. Versus Shirelia's, you still get the movement speed. Rod of the Ages, you're still getting just a ton of raw stats. Also, the mana on Rod of the Ages doubles for giving you extra value on Seraphs whenever you complete Seraphs. So it's just a really good combination for Sona if you can get away with it. And then second item, you pretty much always want to do this, like Archangel Staff. You should have your tier fully charged by the time this comes up, and it's just a phenomenal value. So I would virtually always do that second. Then if you get to a third item, which is unlikely if you're going Rod, maybe if you're going Shirelia's and then Seraphs, you can get to a third. It's probably just Rod of the Ages, or more realistically, Oblivion Orb. In a lot of matchups, it's just cheaper. It's 800 gold. That's pretty much what I would do with Sona most of the time. You can do Ionian Boots. Obviously, those are popular and powerful, but Swifties are also okay because you're going to be getting a lot of extra movement speed off of Shirelia's. You're going to be getting extra movement speed off of your E, off of Rod of the Ages. So having a higher base movement speed with Boots of Swiftness, it's just going to help you kite better if you think that's something you need to do. But yeah, Sona, Monster Scaler, she's really good at stacking all this stuff in lane, right? Whether it's Frostfang, whether it's Tier, her passive / ultimate, or whatever that lowers the cooldown and everything. All you have to do is just spam Q in lane with Aerie. You can take Scorch as well. It's free poke. If you land auto attacks, great. And it's just really hard for a lot of enemies to do anything about that. Outside of like Blitzcrank, Leona, like some of these other hard engaged champs, Sona's just going to be a pest. And not only is she poking you, but she's just stacking up these resources for free in the laning phase. So very strong, especially with pushing lanes, your Caitlyn's, your Jins, stuff like that. You just have to watch out for ganks because you don't have any dashes, obviously. You have your E, which helps out some. But you're probably going to die if you get flanked as Sona. So be careful with that. And also, you know, be careful picking her if you're going to have like a lot of mobility around the map and like split pushing and stuff like that. You got a Trendemir top or a Yorick or something, and you feel like you might have to rotate through the jungle a lot, trying to give them vision, trying to help out or whatever, because if you get caught, you know, in rotations, it's going to be bad. And she has the, like, she's at her strongest when everybody's grouped up, right? She wants to be giving all 5 people all the buffs that she has. She does not want these little skirmishes to break out, these little 1v1, 2v2s, you know, in transit between lanes where there's a lot of, like, darkness and stuff like that. She just does not like those kinds of fights. You're not getting as much value out of all of your items, all of your abilities, all that kind of stuff. So you ideally want to pick her into a 5v5 team fighting team when possible. She can make it happen. She does have the movement speed, you know, with her E to kind of rotate between lanes. It's just more dangerous, and she's just not really doing what she does best when you're doing that. So, anyways, Sona, big winner with the changes to Rod and Archangels. And then the final one I'll put up here is Blitzcrank. You know, he does counter a lot of these enchanters and poke champions, which are very powerful out there. Your Luxes, your Jins, your Sonas, your Sorakas. A lot of these champions are really popular right now. And several of the ADCs are also pretty strong. There aren't that many, like, huge tanks that are taken over. There definitely are some. Like, Zac in the jungle, I think, is pretty good. But if you land these hooks as Blitzcrank, you know, you're probably doing alright. So there's not, like, too much to say about this. High pick rate, high win rate. Glacial Augment's kind of the newer technology where when you grab somebody, you're going to be putting out, you know, that slow field just in case they have a flash or a dash or something to try to get away. It's going to slow them down and let you run them down even more. And then after that, like, your items really don't matter that much. I think a lot of people are doing Shirelias, just so you have the movement speed. Although I will note Righteous, or Radiant, has a much higher win rate, right? It's like a 5% higher win rate. And that's probably really nice on Blitz because your ult is on such a long cooldown, and this can trigger every 60 seconds. So, yeah, it doesn't quite match his kit, you know, healing everybody that much. But the fact that you can use it so often is going to be pretty handy. So, I might try out Radiant right there. Really, you don't need the Shrill. It's like, yes, you can run up and punch him in the face if you're not confident you're going to be able to hit your hooks. But I think just playing around vision, you know, just dominating the vision game, you probably won't need that as much. And then second item is just whatever your team needs. It doesn't matter. If you're going to have trouble killing somebody, get Zeke's. Frozen Heart is fairly popular. The extra mana is nice because Blitz has really low mana regen. And your hooks do cost a lot of mana, so that will allow you to throw more hooks before you have to back. Nice Val, classic, strong item. So yeah, there's not a lot to Blitz, right? You basically just gain control of an area, vision-wise, and hit people with hooks out of bushes. That's pretty much it. But it's very good when there are a ton of squishy enchanters and ADCs running around. You aren't seeing as many, like, Ezreals and stuff like that. Now, Samira is obviously, she's very popular and powerful, and she's pretty good against Blitzhook. But, you know, like I said, Jhin, Caitlyn, Xayah, if her ult's not up, all of these champs are going to be pretty vulnerable to a Blitzhook. Okay. The next few here are pretty good. Like, Amumu still has like almost a 54% win rate, 53% win rate. I'll be honest with you, I don't see him dominating that much in my games. but I'm putting him up here out of respect. Uh, the meta has shifted to include more magic damage champions, so you get a lot more value out of his passive, which, remember, like, amplifies magic damage people take whenever you apply your auto attacks or your ults, or your ult to people. So you do get more value that way, and there are more aggressive, like, caster-based ADCs are being played right now that can really capitalize on that early game aggression. So stuff like Samira, Jhin, Draven, Xayah, to some extent, Lucian, still somewhat popular. So he's good there. Now, his ult still does have a long cooldown, but it's obviously extremely powerful if you're able to land it. But he's mostly known for his all-in potential early on with the double bandage. So he can be very strong, but if you don't get a lot of kills early, you know, he can definitely get blasted later on. Now, a lot of people are still getting even Shroud, just the way that this stacks with your passive. Gives a lot of extra damage to people on your team, but again, hopefully you're noticing a trend here. Radiant Virtue still going to be extremely powerful on him, just because the stats on it are crazy. And, you know, another reason Rakan was really good is he uses this very well. So there's a few different options there. And a lot of people are kind of digging Zhonya's. It does help out a lot with Amumu's, you know, one of his weaknesses, which is like after he goes in and ults and all that, he usually is very squishy for a tank. Like his E does prevent some damage, but not that much. It's not like, you know, a Leona W or something like that. And his base stats are okay, but not insane. So Zhonya's just gives you a little bit more flexibility to stay alive once you get in there, because once you go in, you're not getting back out most of the time. So overall, again, he's pretty good, sort of similar to Blitzcrank. There's not a lot of mobility out there, so a lot of people are not, it's a lot harder to dodge his Qs, but he is going to be vulnerable to poke. You know, he does not have any sort of sustain in his kit. The Q is a pretty slender hitbox. It's a lot more slender than Blitzcrank, and you have to go in when you land it, like Leona. The nice thing about Blitz is you pull them really far out of position over to you, which is almost always going to be favorable. But if you have to go into them, that can be a problem. If your ADC doesn't follow up immediately, or their jungler just like shows up out of a bush or something, you know, if the fight just goes south, you're going to die. Just like most engaged champs, except for like Blitzcrank or Rakan. A lot of times they can kind of, Rakan can get back out and Blitz never has to go in the first place. So he is strong. I would say practice him. I personally think he's a little overrated, but obviously the stats are the stats, right? He does have a high win rate, so again, I'm respecting it. I don't think he was doing so. Is he even played in pro? A little bit. So small sample size in pro at 44% win rate. It's weird because like pro right now, it's obviously better than, or like different than solo queue. But a lot of stuff that people think is really OP actually is not winning that much in pro. So like Heimerdinger, for example, it was like, oh my god, it's OP. It's in like every game. It's 40% win rate. Lulu 34. Yumi 46. Everyone's like tripping about Yumi. It's 46% win rate. She is very annoying. And then some of these like low-key things that no one's talking about, old trusty, you know, Nautilus and Leona are low-key doing pretty well right now. So it's kind of an interesting representation in what people are actually saying and what they think are strong on broadcasts and other content creators, but then what is actually statistically winning in pro games, or even if you look at low analytics in solo queue. It'd be kind of different. Okay, Maokai, and we'll speed this up a little bit here. Maokai did get some nerfs on this patch, but he's still very strong. You'll probably still see him in the jungle. But he has a really high win rate as support, and there are several different ways you can build him. I think the tank version is stronger right now with, you guessed it, Radiant Virtue. Still going to be very strong on him. But the AP version is fun and is still like pretty good. Now, I would not go for First Strike. That was what what was getting recommended up here because it had a high win rate. You're just way too squishy. I tried that once. It didn't work out well. I think I won the game, but I had a terrible stat line. Aftershock is pretty much a necessity if you ever want to go in. Font of Life is solid, and then Second Wind, helps you through poke, and then Overgrowth is just pretty good value, especially if you're going to go Virtue. Now, Zombie Ward, like I said, almost always on supports. Now for this, Treasure Hunter can be okay. I think your ultimate is very strong, so I would consider Ulti Hunter. I mean, it should be a kill almost every time if you're setting it up from the right angles. Or Relentless Hunter if you want to roam around a lot, which he's very, very good if you can roam around and get close enough to people to get that W on them. They're probably going to die. The problem is W is really short range. It's like 500 range. So it's an excellent engage tool, but it's just really sketchy to actually land it. Okay, so we scroll down here. As usual, Radiant is the highest win rate, but there are a lot of items that are good on him, right? Mandate, now this is for the AP build. Your seeds will trigger this a lot, so that's still good. And then if you want to amplify the damage, Even Shroud can be good. Dead Man's Plate's a little bit of a weird one. You don't see this on many other champions right now, but because especially if you want to roam, like I mentioned before, his main problem is just movement speed. If you can just get close enough, you're going to be able to land stuff on him, right? So just getting that 2900 early on. Now, this does not have ability haste on it. It doesn't have magic resist on it. It's just missing a lot of key things that most people like, on items. But again, if you're really leveraging that movement speed to run between lanes, it can be pretty strong. Demonic did just get nerfed, so I'm not sure if I would recommend getting this on him. It still does have a pretty good win rate. Again, I'm not sure if this reflects a lot of the changes. But if you're going sort of a tankier version, I would probably just go Mythic into something like Deadman's. So like Radiant Deadman's. Or I guess if you want to go AP, probably just Mandate into Demonic. But yeah, so he's just flexible. He's a flex pick in and of itself. People, for a lot of the draft are not going to know if he's going jungle, support, top. I don't think you see him top a ton. But they'll be confused about that, which can help out with your draft. And then, again, you can adjust. Do you need to be a primary engage tank, or does your team need a little bit more damage with AP? So he has several options. Definitely pretty far above average in both. It's a great pick. Soraka, not a lot of new technology or stuff going on there. Her win rate's not amazing, but I kind of put her in the Sona camp a little bit. She doesn't scale as hard with the double mana items as Sona does. And Grievous did just basically get buffed this patch. So, I wouldn't really argue if someone wanted to put her in tier 3. But I just have her up in tier 2 because she basically, if you don't get killed a lot in lane, you almost automatically win the lane. She's one of the best at neutralizing many of these other poke champions out there. Surprisingly, he's very good with Radiant Virtue as well, even though your ultimate's on a long cooldown. But yeah, I mean, she's Soraka, neutralizes lanes, scales really well late game with healing. So if you have a bunch of meatballs on your team, especially something like a Zac who might get a Spirit Visage, she can be a pretty strong pick. Lux, a lot of people downplay Lux, but especially at high level play, that's not a huge sample size, but 33 games in Pro is still quite a bit at 64% win rate. So I've been really high on Lux for a long time if you want an AP champ. Just because her poke is very consistent in the laning phase, and she also has really good vision control later on in the game, because you can use your E from like 1,200 units away to check bushes. Also, if you get proficient with that E usage, you can use it. It's a pretty big slow. It's like a 45% slow. So if someone's trying to gank you, just throw your E down in their path, and then don't activate it for a long time. Just leave it there, and when they try to walk through it, it's just like super, super slow. It's like Singe goo. type of slow. So pretty good at disrupting, slowing people down, and then obviously if they're walking through that slow, it makes it very easy to hit your Q. So pretty good at controlling areas. Now, her damage later on, I would say, is kind of low unless you get really fed. I know that sounds crazy, but she doesn't have any like percentage health damage, and she doesn't have any like repeatable sustained damage really, like Zyra Plants or Brand Burn. And it's just basically your R. I mean, like your Q and your E do decent damage too, but it can be frustrating late game when you're just never going to be able to kill anybody because they've got, you know, one or two magic resist items. So she doesn't have a ton of utility outside of that. You do have your bind with your Q. You do have a shield, but it's kind of wimpy. But if you can, you know, press your advantage early, get ahead, pair her with a Caitlyn or a Jhin or something like that, you can snowball, you know, pretty hard early on. So she does have that going for her, and the vision control is something that sets her apart from a lot of other AP champions. I think a lot of people kind of have switched off of Lux as a poke and just go for Dinger. Dinger is more mana efficient with his push, with his turrets. He does a lot more sustained damage against melee champions if he drops his big turret. You have similar poke with your rockets as she has with her E. In a lot of circumstances, you have your stun with your grenade that's similar to Lux's Q. Say Lux's Q is probably easier to land. But overall, Lux, especially after some of the Heimer nerfs, I think she's just a little bit more consistent, especially if you have her in a poke lane than Heimerdinger is right now. And then finally, I'll put Leona up here. Again, she has a pretty high win rate in Pro. Her win rate in solo queue, I think, was not phenomenal, but it was okay. But she just sort of has the potential. Yeah, it's all right. It's not great. But she has the potential to snowball games really hard, especially, again, if they don't have a lot of mobility. And she can even engage on Samira, which is really hard to do. If you open with your ult, her little blade twirl doesn't stop that because it comes down from vertically rather than from the side. So she even has a way to open up on Samira. Very low cooldown, which means that if you want to get Radiant Virtue, it's really effective on her. She loves the because you open with your ult a lot of times, then that means you're going to get that 20 ability haste on all of your other abilities. Your W, your Q, and your E. And unlike a lot of champions, all of her abilities are good. They're all very useful. And if you have that, 20 ability haste, then you're just going to be able to just almost completely stun lock somebody the entire time. So, really powerful champion. Very risky. If you're going to get chain ganked bottom, she has no escapes, pretty much no mobility. She is tankier than most other engaged supports when she gets in there, and she does like to stay in there. She has low cooldown, she can activate her E and her Q a lot, but she can get baited and beaten up in some situations too. So, I think she has the potential to snowball really hard, works really well with Radiant. So that's why I'm putting her in tier 2. Again, I could see an argument where you want to put her in tier 3, and that's fine. But I think that people are kind of sleeping on her, especially with less mobility in the game. Now, Jhin and Xayah are probably going to take Gale Force. That's really annoying for Leona to deal with, but nevertheless, I still think she's strong. And then the last little bit here, like I said, Dinger's down. He got dinged, I guess is a horrible pun, with some nerfs on this patch. He's okay. If you're against a lot of melee champions, I think that he can be really strong, but he can also get poked out. Pretty high skill cap to use him correctly, to hit his skill shots and decide what you should be doing with your R in different situations. Janna has an above average win rate. It's like 51, 52. She is very good at peeling, but she just doesn't pressure quite enough. She doesn't help the Samira, the Jhin, the Xayah, and stuff like that snowball. So she's okay. I just feel like they're better options a lot of the time. She's really better where you're trying to protect like a hyper scaling champion, like a Jinx type of champ, which is okay, but you really want to come online and start, helping your ADC snowball a lot earlier now. And then Xayah and Brand, very similar, high pressure, mid-range mages. I'd probably just rather go with Lux for more consistency and longer range. Shorter cooldowns too. The big problem with Xayah is basically you have an 18-second cooldown on your trades because that's how long it takes to get an extra plant. So her trades are really good. It's just her cooldowns are obnoxious, especially in the early game. And Brand is okay, but it really requires you to take risky positioning to land your E a lot of times. And, that's what you need for a lot of combos. But especially if they have a lot of melees, being able to bounce around your ult on top of people, obviously going to be good. Lulu is solid. I mean, Lulu could be tier 2 if you have Twitch, who has a pretty high win rate right now on your team, or some other hyper carry. And the problem is those aren't the really popular and powerful ADCs for the most part right now, right? She's like okay with stuff like Jhin, Samira, Xayah, but she really wants things more like Twitch, Jinx, Kog'Maw, maybe Vayne, stuff like that. And all of those like, want to auto attack 10 times in a team fight type of ADCs just aren't where it's at right now. A lot of it's just the burst ADCs that can really take advantage of second item Infinity Edge with the changes on this patch are the ones that are going to be really strong. Renata, I haven't seen her in forever. I don't remember if they nerfed her or not, but still going to be pretty strong. Good peeler. Again, I suspect she's really at her best in dealing with a hyperscaler that you can revive and protect. But she's still going to be alright. Nami got nerfed on this patch. Still has a pretty high win rate. Still okay. I could see an argument for keeping her in tier 2. I think that would be fine. Obviously very good with Lucian. Has pretty good peel. Does get outscaled later on in the game by a lot of other supports. Doesn't have a lot of mobility, so yes, like her wave and her bubble can sort of peel, but that's not going to help you that much against like Blitz, or Amumu in a lot of cases, Leona in a lot of cases. They're still going to be able to get you, so that's problematic. Seraphine's okay. I really haven't seen a lot out of her. I think she just has long cooldowns. Sona's just a much better version right now because the way she scales with the stacking items. Bard, weird champion, decent, just like not great with a lot of the premier items. If you can roam around and get kills, that's awesome, but he's okay. Like, as usual, if you're really good on Bard, I could see him being tier 2. You can definitely win with him, but you just got to play him a lot. Rel actually has quite a high win rate right now. I just almost never see this champion. She's extremely good against Rakan, so that's annoying. But yeah, I feel like she's somewhat high skill cap. So I don't know. It's just, I just have almost no data to go on other than win rates. I just have not played against her a lot. I feel like she's probably just going to get outshined by other champs. I tried to play her, I think it was last week or maybe the week before. Felt kind of bad. But again, it's a very low sample size. She's got a high win rate. Again, you could definitely convince me that she should be tier 2, but I just kind of have her in tier 3. She's okay. I just think most people aren't going to do that well on her. Morgana, I mean, I could even see her going down in a tier 4. Like, if you see a return of Nautilus and Leona or against Blitzcrank, like, she's pretty good. But, I mean, I guess she's good against Maokai and Amumu as well. It's just really long cooldowns. Really slow skill shot. 2 of her abilities are borderline worthless. I mean, the R's like okay. Yeah, I'm just not like super excited about Morgana. And that's, I guess, about it as far as I'll talk about. Nautilus, I would prefer Leona. Nautilus just feels super squishy. I tried to play him the other day, and I know he does have a good win rate in Pro with Glacial, so I don't know. Maybe I just need to practice him and just, play better. But he definitely has a really good kit, obviously, for support. It's just, can you live? But Radiant's probably really good on him, too, just like everybody else. Ashe support actually has a pretty decent win rate in Pro, and I've seen her some in solo queue, but I think she's still just too squishy. Obviously, the arrow's good. Like, you do have some nice poke early on. Umbral is a good, like, vision control item, but I don't know. I'm just not thrilled. I know Bradley loves Ashe support out there, so sorry, Brad. I mean, Brad can probably make it work, but yeah, I'm just not completely sold on her. And then, like, Braum and Tom, Alistar, these really low damage, tanky champions bottom, I just don't think are where you want to be right now. Vel'Koz and Xerath can work as poke champs, but I'd rather just play, you know, Lux, Zyra, Brand, things like that. And then these kind of like Yumi's in the dumpster, I think, especially after these changes. Jhin support, I haven't seen that really yet. I guess you could put a Azir down there if you want to count Azir support. I think these are super gimmicky supports people are trying to play to counter Heimerdinger support, who doesn't even need to be countered. He's got a 40% win rate. It's alright. You don't have to think of all this crazy stuff to deal with a 40% win rate champion. I have not seen this, though. Maybe it's better. Seems really gimmicky to me. And these kind of like all-in, you know, gimmick champions with Set and Pantheon that have to turbo snowball. If you want to kill lane, I think they're just way better chance. Like, Amumu or Maokai if you want to tank kill lane, or if, like, Zyra or Brand if you want to mage kill lane, or Blitzcrank. I mean, I think you're just, like, these champs, you're just kind of overthinking it a little bit, and you're trying to be a little too cute, you know? But if you like them, if you want to play them, like, you can do it, but I think most people, if you're really just trying to be as objective as possible and you're looking to win, you could probably find better options than these champs. Yumi, like, maybe, still with, like, Twitch, like, there might be a couple of options where she's still, like, okay and playable, but it's not looking good for Yumi, I think, in solo queue. Anyways, that's going to be it. Thanks very much. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. I'm going to release a video soon kind of talking about my new channel schedule. There's a chance that I may not be streaming every day just because of my work schedule with school. I have to get up so early to get the kids to school now. I have to get up around like 6:30, so staying up until like 1 or 2 in the morning is kind of challenging. I am getting a little bit older these days too. So there's a chance I may not stream on Monday or Wednesday, or perhaps I could just start earlier around 8 or 9. But I'll keep you guys up to date on that. And Sandra and I have been trying to go out and do some more fun stuff on the weekends as well. So there's a decent chance on some weekends, either Friday or Saturday, that I may not stream too, depending on how late we stay out. But I'm trying to, you know, spend more time hanging out with the wife and kids. I'm trying to like reconnect with some friends, you know, that I haven't seen in a while. I just hung out with a good buddy of mine that I haven't seen in months last week. So I'm just trying to get out, you know, and be a little bit more social, hang out, and stuff like that. So there might be, you know, a couple of days a week where I don't stream, but I'll let you guys know. I'll keep you up to date. But I am still going to try to stream, you know, at least 4 or 5 days a week. But and I'm going to try to give you guys more content like this too, like tier lists for each role, each patch if I can. And then just maybe some videos just talking about some weird builds that people mention, like Jhin or Azir or whatever. And then I can like dissect it and give you my thoughts on whether or not I think it's good. But anyways, that's it. Thanks. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.